Hey guys, Brent Build Show. Talking about windows today. We've been doing these wood window workshops around the state, and people have been saying, hey, I want that information. So, two-part video. We're gonna put these together, show you why I would rather have this window in my house than a new window. Don't believe me? Stay tuned. Okay, so the reason why I would rather have that window than a new window is because it can look like this when I know it's fixed up after we've restored it, right? The whole double hung window system is a beautiful system. Now, historically, we're sitting on the outside of the window now, but historically, this was a system that had two sash, okay, that moved up and down, and they're counterbalanced. There's weights here. Literally, when we're making new sash, we'll weigh the sash. Say it weighs 10 pounds, we'd have two 5-pound weights, okay? So it's a pretty cool system. The way it worked is that you would have convection air going through the house. You'd actually have hot air going out this way and cool air coming in this way. So it was like an early air conditioning system, and it really worked. Now, we don't use this as much today, but what do you do about, energy efficiency? And that tends to be the biggest problem. The things we hear are, I've got to get rid of my historic windows because they're in such bad shape. I've got to get rid of them because they're so drafty. I'm going to save so much money on my energy bills. I'm here to tell you that that is a lie, okay? The FTC in 2012 came down on 5 window companies for false advertising, saying that you could save 50% on your energy bills if you changed your windows. That just isn't true. And the data now and to back this up is there. Let me explain to you how this works. Because the real big point is that you're not going to see a significant savings on your energy bill if you replace your windows. In other words, it isn't worth it. Okay? Two things. One, think about energy loss in your house. Okay, where does that happen? Well, in a pre-1930s or 40s house, you're talking about a house that most likely has never been insulated. So the majority of your energy loss is actually going out walls and ceilings, okay? The studies show that only about 10 to 20% goes out doors and windows, okay? 10% on windows. Now, the second piece of that is energy use, okay? When you pay your energy bill every month, how much of that is actually spent on heating and cooling? Well, only about 30 or 40% is spent on that. The other things are on appliances, TVs, hot water, right? Other things that are going towards, your general use. So, because only 30 or 40% of your energy use is even spent on energy efficiency, the thought that you're going to change your windows in your house and expect to see a savings on your energy bill, it just doesn't happen. And that's why the FTC did that. So realize that the main argument is that these are so inefficient is just bogus. This then is a very energy efficient window. And let me show you why, okay? Because we can take this window, weather strip it, add insulation to your house and to your walls, spend 1/10 of the money that you would spend on new windows, and have a very efficient system on your house. Now, historically, even going back to the turn of this century, they understood that windows were inefficient. So what did they do? Well, I'll show you. They used screens and storms, okay? So in the summertime, and these are the same size, okay? And they fit in the same groove, okay? So essentially what would happen is the summertime comes around and you put your screens in here, right? Your screens would go into your window, and now you have nice fresh breezes with no bugs, okay? Wintertime comes around, you will take the screen out, you'll pull the storms out, and all of these would have been marked on the side with a number so you know which window they go in. These would go in, and now you have a very energy efficient sealed house, right? So if you have an old house, you're in a cold climate. In Texas, our median temperature is 68 degrees, so we don't have a lot of cold weather, right? But if you're up in the Northeast and you have really cold weather, the storms are a beautiful way of making your windows much more energy efficient. So the idea that you're going to actually save money by taking your windows out, it shows that the payback time period is somewhere between 40 and 100 years. Now, on top of that, okay, most new windows have a warranty of about 10 years, okay? That's as long as the big manufacturers are willing to warrant their window. Now, when we build windows, we're building a 100-year window. Now, we do that because we're restoring 100-year-old windows all the time, and we know how long they last. If you get the wood right, if you build it properly, it will last a long time. So, if you got a 40 to 100-year payback, but the new window you're putting in is only going to last 20 to 30 years, you don't even get back to that payback time. So you're putting in a disposable product. And that's really important to remember, that your historic windows last a really long time. And now I'm going to show you why, because we're going to look at wood next. So wood quality, okay? Essentially, the production and harvesting of lumber, if you want to consider that, is really changed in the last 80 years, okay? Up until the 1940s, essentially all the wood that was being harvested in America was virgin forest, okay? As we moved across the country in the 1850s, 1860s, we essentially began to harvest, and as we developed those areas, we harvested that wood. So the eastern white pine in New York, the longleaf yellow pine, and then into the 1920s and 30s, the firs and redwoods out on the West Coast. Now, what that means is that today, most wood, especially production wood that would go into a production window, is plantation grown. That means it is harvested like you would harvest wheat or corn. Huge plantations in New Zealand and Chile where they grow trees in tree farms. Those trees grow really fast, okay? And they actually chose a western pine called radiata pine to go into those plantations because it grows so fast. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you've ever been to the redwood forest and know about how dark it is in there, how it's kind of gloomy, right? Well, essentially what happens is a tree growing up in this old growth forest would grow very slowly, okay? Because it might get sunlight for an hour a day, and it couldn't support a lot of branches, right? Sunlight allows the trees to support more branches. And so it would go up, and finally when it broke through the canopy, then it would start supporting a lot of branches. So what you have with an old growth tree is this very long trunk, and then these trees right at the top, as opposed to a plantation grown forest where all the trees are planted and they're very short and they're growing up almost like Christmas trees. And until they get 30 or 40 feet high and the sun can't hit the bark, they have all kinds of tree branches there. Now, what does that mean? A knot is where it's grown into the trunk of the tree, right? And so if you have a knot, that's because there was a branch going in there. Old growth lumber is very clear there. The other thing is, and if you compare these two pieces of wood, this is a piece of longleaf yellow pine. It's very old. Notice how tight those growth rings are, like 15 growth rings per inch versus this piece of yellow pine from a lumber yard where it might have 3 growth rings in an inch, okay? What does that mean? Well, growth rings are about stability, okay? So if you've ever seen a piece of 2x4 at a job site and it looks like a ski jump, right? That's because it has no stability. All of those growth rings add strength and stability, okay? Second part is because it grows up so slow, you have a lot more heartwood, okay? Heartwood is the good stuff, right? You have 2 types of wood. You have sapwood on the outside and you have heartwood in the middle. The more heartwood you have, the more rot and decay resistant it is. You can actually see on this piece of longleaf pine the color difference here and here, right? This is very light, this is very amber, okay? You can see it too here. So basically this is all heartwood and then this is sapwood. Now, Forest Product Labs, which is the government testing center for wood, and they have actually graded wood by how decay resistant it is. There's very resistant, moderate, and then non-resistant. Now, where do you think radiata pine lies out? Okay, it is a non-resistant wood, okay? So the fact that it's grown fast, there isn't any hardwood, and it's not very stable means it won't last very long. If you've ever had a new window or a new door that's decayed after 5, 10, 3, 4, 5 years, right? It's because the wood's no good. And if you're going to learn anything from this deal, in fact, I did shot a whole video on good wood. Go look for that on the Build Show. The wood is everything. And so if you have a house built before 1940, most likely your windows are made with old growth wood. So why would you throw something out that's going to last 100 years for something that's going to only last 20 years? Well, you wouldn't, right? And so it doesn't make sense for us to get rid of those old windows because we've got a product that's going to last so long. So the next piece we'll talk about glass and why glass is so important for window design. So the next piece is glass, okay? And so glass, if you have old windows and you look through them and they're kind of shimmering and they're kind of moving, right? you're looking at old glass. Now, what is that? Well, essentially, over the last 200 years, we've had three different types of glasses. We've had what's called crown glass, where they would have actually taken a glass ball, and all this would have been handmade, right? They would have made a big ball, spun it, and they would have made a big sheet of glass that was round, okay? And then they would cut pieces out of that piece of glass. Now, this goes back to the 1700s, and you really couldn't get very big pieces of glass when you're making these glass discs that are about this big. If you have that type of glass in your house, you actually see striations in the glass as it moves around, circular striations, because it was blown and spun really fast, centrifugal force creating the sheet, okay? Next, what they did was they made hand-blown cylinder glass. It was the same process, but instead of spinning the glass, they would actually throw the glass, okay? And so they'd have their tube, they'd be blowing the glass, and they would actually stand up on these pedestals and let gravity push that glass down so the striation lines would be like this, okay? They cut the glass, and those big tubes would lay open. Well, that process goes into the mid-1800s as the glass industry becomes industrialized in the early 1900s. Same process, they had a big vacuum that would go into the glass and then pull up, okay, and then pull these pieces of glass, big long tubes, 8 feet around. They would then be laid down, cut, laid open, and they actually graded the glass. So that lasts until about the 1940s. Now, in the 1940s, they have what's called float glass, where float glass is actually made on a conveyor belt in a bed, and it actually dries on a piece of tin so that there's no striations in it. So that's why ranch style houses and anything after that period has no character in the glass. We've made up this board because there's a lot of historic glass things that we see on jobs that are kind of part of the character of how things were made. We've got this wire glass, the chicken wire glass. This is called a snowflake glass. But there's some wavy glass down here, and there's a couple companies that actually still make wavy glass so that you can get that character and that historic feel. But this demonstrates the different types of character and the different types of pieces of glass, because glass tends to be something that is character defining, right? And so if you can get this glass, and when we're making new windows, we'll sometimes put in the wavy glass because it's such a great look, right? It's nothing like getting your cup of coffee in the morning, looking out your window and seeing the shimmer of the glass. Glass, because it was such an expensive product, because it was handmade for so long, means that you couldn't make big sheets of glass. So in the colonial period, the reason they have, and even going back further to the English period where they have little diamonds, the reason they have little diamonds of glass is because they couldn't make big sheets, okay? And a very expensive house like Carter's Grove in Virginia would have big sheets of glass, okay? That all would have been hand crown glass, right? Probably imported from England. Very expensive. And so even you'll hear stories of houses being taxed based on the amount of glass that they had. And so it was one of those products. And so it's really character defined. It's really important. And if you have it, you want to keep it. The last piece of this is that historic windows can be repaired, and we're going to go back to the window. I'm going to show you the standardization of parts that makes that easy and why we restore windows all the time. So why does design consistency matter? Well, we had a window from a big manufacturer that shan't be named. We probably put in these windows 10 or 15 years ago. One of the windows rotted out. We said we need to get it replaced, and they said, well, we don't make that window anymore. Okay, so that's the case. We just did another house with a different window. It didn't match the original windows that were in there 30 years ago. Now, 30 years, you might go, well, yeah, I could see that would be a difference. The deal is though, with an historic window, I can match these parts exactly. And because of standardization, because of the way they're manufactured, because of the way they're made, we can repair these, infinite number of times if they needed that. So standardization starts in the industries in the, early 1800s and lasts into the 1940s. So there is over 100 years of design that doesn't really change. The stiles and rails basically are the same size, the check rail, the mutton bars, all those things are easily remade and reproduced. And so we can make this window again, we can restore it again, infinite number of times. So hopefully now you won't be throwing out your windows, right? Certainly you shouldn't be looking at your house saying, my windows are drafty, I need to get rid of them. And you're not saying, well, I'm going to save so much money by replacing my windows, it's a no-brainer, right? it's a no-brainer that you should be keeping them, right? Not the no-brainer you should be throwing them away. Do you know that 50% of the window replacement industry is replacement windows? Okay, so this is something that you've got a disposable product you're putting in your house. You're wasting your money. You've got product that's going to last so long and so well. The other thing, the character defining piece I didn't talk about, but I've seen houses that have 20/1 windows, okay, which is a very complex, hard window to make. And I go back later, they've replaced the windows with 2/1, okay? The character definition that sometimes old windows have is a huge deal. So you need to keep your historic windows. You need to maintain them. You need to restore them. And next time, on the next video, the second part of this, I'm going to show you how. We're actually going to go to someone's house. We're going to evaluate it. We're going to cut it open. We're going to restore it. I'm going to show you how easy it is for you to do yourself. I'm Brent Hull. Thanks for watching.